There we go. All right. Good evening, everybody. For whatever reason, the Facebook live stream that was scheduled to kick off at 7 started like it was spooling up, and then it just sat there spooling and refused to kick off. So we had to delete that out and kick off a new one on the fly here. So we'll give it a second here for people to jump in. Make sure everything's working like it's supposed to be, which it looks like it finally is. All right. So we can go ahead and jump off. We're getting better at turning the office into a studio here. I realize if I stand back a little bit, I save you some of that bright, radiant dome effect from my very fashionable pandemic haircut here. So to start off tonight, we'll give a little teaser for what's coming up later tonight. We had a visit here from News 12, New Jersey, and they came down because they actually saw this Facebook feed last week, and they wanted to do a piece on essentially how we're helping to protect the officers here, and how that in turn impacts how the officers provide public service here and try to keep the public safe and flatten the curve as we're delivering service. So that's going to air at 10 p.m. tonight, and of course, tomorrow we'll go ahead and get that clip linked up here on Facebook and pushed out on social media. So they are, I believe, channel 1127 on our local cable here, or if you're on the not on the high number channels and you're on the low number, it's channel 62. So 10 p.m. tonight on News 12 New Jersey. It was good to see them here, kind of trying to highlight the great work that our officers are doing out there. So we can jump right into the numbers for today. Bernie, how you doing, man? One of our retired officers tuning in tonight. So if we look at our numbers today, we had 8 new positives in town today. Brings us up to 134 positives in town. Little perspective on that, we've got a little over 4,200 positives in Ocean County, and New Jersey as a whole, we crossed the 75,000 threshold today. So I think there's probably a little bit of that backlog from Easter working through the tests today, because we have a little over 4,200 cases in Ocean County, and our overall numbers in New Jersey went up over 4,000 today. So definitely, I'm sure playing some statistical catch up from Easter. So if we look at that, what do we look at here when we're looking at how things are working as far as our flattening the curve, what we're doing from a public safety perspective here? So we had, if you look back in March when the numbers started coming in and the positives started here, we were doubling every 3 to 5 days, right? So whatever number we had of positives in town, that doubled every 3 to 5 days. When you look now, we're doubling more in the range of every 9 to 11 days. So clearly, things flattening out. So that's good. When we talk about some of the other numbers that we're seeing in town, we'll see that that's the positive impact that you're making by staying home as much as you can and limiting your interaction out in public. So we look at those numbers. We talked about them last week, so a little updated, hot off the presses here for today. Our overall call volumes down 9% month to date. So this same set of days last month versus this month, we're down about 9% overall. Those crashes, motor vehicle crashes that we talked about, I think last week we were 56% down. This week, month over month, it's now down 64%. So we see those numbers continue to drop off. Domestic violence, unfortunately, is still up. We're still looking at that essentially being triple what we saw last month, and the numbers that we would normally see. So that's up around 200%, 200, which again is something that we're trying to get as much information out there as we can and address that as effectively as we can. But that's an unfortunate predicted byproduct of what we have going on with the stay-at-home order. So that's where the calls are. The call load has changed so much that we're starting to see that actually impact if we look year over year. So if we look at year to date 2020 and compare that to what we had year to date last year, we see that the call volume overall down about 2.5%. So what's been going on in the last month has already had an impact that we can see when we spread it over, the 4 months. And those DVs that we talked about up 16% year to date. So that's where the numbers are at. When we talk about the new changes over the past week since we spoke, the face coverings we had just started talking about last week. We were probably about 48 hours out, I think, roughly from that kicking in last week when we spoke. That has gone very smoothly for us as far as the way our businesses in town have implemented that. We've had very few compliance issues. And most of those, not most of those, all of those, if we saw any, weren't from a purposeful willingness to not follow the executive orders. It was just simply an educational, evolution where they didn't understand how it applied. So we've been working with the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, with the Sheriff's Department, and just keeping an eye on things and making sure that everybody's complying with the executive orders. And happy to report again that things are going great at the local level with that. So I want to give the officer update because that question always comes up. So we're still in great shape as far as our health and welfare of the agency goes. We only have one officer who's still out on quarantine. It's the same one we talked about last week, who has a family member who tested positive. So that's the only officer we have out quarantined right now, and we don't have nor have we had any officers that have tested positive. So if we look statewide right now, there are more than 600 police officers who are COVID positive right now, and we have north of 2,000 that are quarantined right now statewide for either potential exposure or exposure. So we're faring very well here, and a big part of that goes to the help we get locally here from the committee and the administrator Marty Lasella, who have been great at supporting us in getting the equipment we need quickly for our officers. So when we see places playing catch up to get PPE. We don't have to worry about that because we've already been in it for a month now, or probably more than a month. And a shout out to Tom Lombarski, our CFO, who is a godsend the way he helps manage the budget and helps us. When you need to procure things quickly, the room for error goes up, right? So Tom, being an auditor in his past professional life. He's great to have here because he makes sure not only that he works with us to get things done quickly, but that they get done right, which is obviously important for us when this is all over. And we're looking to get reimbursed that 75% of our expenditures that come back to us through FEMA. So thank you, Tom, for everything you're doing to keep us safe here. So another quick shout out, just because it's something different to talk about before we get to our question and answers here and a couple other things. Wearing my shirt from the NA tonight, my session mates in the 278th, and it doesn't get talked about enough. But part of how we have been able to stay ahead of this here is we're able to leverage this big network that I was privileged to be a part of back last year down in Quantico. So one of the first phone calls I made about this all the way back in February was to California Highway Patrol Coastal Division Chief LD Maples, who was a session mate, and we both share an interest in emergency management and had both done a lot of reading about pandemics. And when I called LD about this, LD was kind enough to share California Highway Patrol's pandemic plan that he had actually written for them years ago, back for the H1N1 pandemic. And the plan that we built here, which has been distributed and copied in other parts of the state, was actually built on a framework of the hard work that LD did out of the California Highway Patrol. At the same time, I've had a great opportunity to talk to session mates over in Europe. So whether it's Martina in Switzerland or Magali in France, Dirk in Belgium, we've had all of these conversations looking at, because they're weeks to months ahead of us over there, what problems did they see? What solutions did they find? And that's also helped craft the responses that we've had here. So just want to give a shout out to my session 278 classmates because they're a huge help going through this. So want to touch on the fraud issues because they continue to pop up. And since we're on the Facebook platform, I'll focus on the Facebook fraud stuff tonight. So we're just asking everybody be mindful while we're sitting clicking through and we see all these fun posts about, hey, this will be fun. Here's my favorite color. Here's my favorite band. Here's, my favorite this, my favorite that. Some of those posts are data mining for your favorites because those are tied into passwords a lot of times. You'll know when you go to log into one of your accounts and you forgot your password, they ask you those special questions like, what was your least favorite subject in high school? Or what was your first pet's name? Or what's your favorite color? What's your favorite band? So it's fun to to see some of the back and forth, but you want to be mindful about not putting information out there that people can use to essentially break into your accounts and go into identity theft and all those fun things that none of us want to deal with in the middle of a pandemic, if ever. Another one of those that's going on right now is the post your high school photo. Hey, support the class of 2020. Show your high school photo. Well, a lot of those security questions. Where'd you go to high school, or what year did you graduate high school? So when we have tens of thousands of people posting on Facebook, hey, here's my picture from when I graduated, Southern Regional High School in 1984. Well, again, we're putting that information out there that allows people who don't have good intentions to compromise some of our accounts. So just wanted to throw that out there. Outside of all of that, again, the support for our officers, both from the businesses in the community, all of our community members, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the department and the officers for that. They're working obviously in a challenging environment. They're wearing a bunch. They're used to wearing a certain level of uncomfortable gear, but they're really wearing uncomfortable gear now. The PPE they're in is hot, it's cumbersome, and while it's very necessary and is a big part of the reason that we don't have attrition and resource and staffing problems here, it is not fun to wear. So I'm sure they appreciate all the support that they are getting from the community. It doesn't go unnoticed. And finally, on that front, I want to talk about. I talk about a lot of numbers, but one number that stood out last month, it was nice to see, because we're keeping the workforce healthy, and because we've put all these staffing adjustments into place to deal with the pandemic. March's overtime was the lowest monthly overtime that we've had in this police department going back probably close to a decade. I had to stop looking going back through years because I didn't have time to keep digging. But to see the overtime down that low is great because that just means that we're really in good shape staffing wise as we continue to move through this. So that's really all I have from an update perspective. Gives us plenty of time to jump into a little question and answer. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Well, first for the glare coming off my radiant dome as I move closer to the computer, but two, if I skip your questions, which everybody was telling me I was skipping them last week, I'm not skipping you on purpose. There's a delay in how they post on here. When I jumped on last week, the day after, I probably saw 50 posts that I didn't want to see when they were posted. So, one of my favorite questions, because I don't like shying away, are we violating people's rights through unconstitutional social distancing laws? So our job as police officers actually is really simple. We don't get to do the interpretation of the Constitution. That's what the judicial branch does, and we also don't make the laws. That's what the executive branch does. So our job is to simply, Ed Flynn, who's a police chief who was out in Wisconsin, I always thought put this really well. We serve best as the custodians of democracy. Our job is to just kind of shepherd this along while the rule makers are making the rules and the judges decide what's constitutional and what's not. So our job is to enforce the executive order that the governor puts out, to work in accordance with the directives that the attorney general puts out. And at the end of the day, if someone thinks what law enforcement is doing is unconstitutional, there is a beautiful system of redress for that. And that means you get to take that to courts, and I'm sure there will be people challenging different portions of different executive orders that are out there. So no, we certainly take an oath that we take quite seriously to uphold the Constitution. What none of us want are police officers deciding when, where, and how we're going to apply and interpret the Constitution, because that's not our role. That's the judiciary's role to do that, right? And that's what we have judges for. So hope that answers that question. People love to throw that out there. You know, it falls into these straw man arguments that we have out there. But at the end of the day, if you don't agree with what the police departments do and how they enforce these laws, there are avenues of redress that are available for that. So I'll say it's a good question because it is a good question and it keeps coming up. Nice comments only, please. Yeah, people, if don't worry about posting up mean comments. If you think you're going to hurt my feelings, I guarantee you, whatever you're putting on here tonight, I've heard much worse in the last 26 years. Are the UV lanterns working? That's a great question. Yeah, the UV lanterns are working out great. Again, that's an area where we really appreciate the network that we have in this county. To kind of go back and touch on that, that was an idea we got from Manchester PD. They had just assumed basically bringing first aid and fire under under public safety, under the police chief there, and that's how they learned about the UVC lantern, and Chief Parker in Manchester gave us that idea. We were able to run with that and actually get that UV lantern before the mad rush came in. And, I think they're probably back ordered 6+ weeks right now was the last I heard for agencies that are trying to get those UVC lanterns. So UV lanterns have been working out great. Another thing we're using is the gas-powered backpack sprayer with an antiseptic solution. And that was, we were kind enough, the sheriff, Mastronardi, was kind enough to give us that, loan it to us from the sheriff's department. So we've been able to use that every shift to sanitize the patrol car. So we're doing great on the sanitation front, and that's another reason, another piece of that puzzle, how we're keeping the officers safe and not having to quarantine officers here for exposure or for COVID-related positives here. Got to wade through the Governor Murphy comments. Have your Governor Murphy fights. I just don't get involved in those. Why are some people so negative? I've been asking that for a long time, Carol. I'm searching for a question. Plenty of statements. Plenty of opinions. Are we good question, Brandy. Are we worried that numbers will spike with the test site near the ShopRite next week? Again, they've had the testing site in an area up in Toms River at OCC that's getting moved down to the Fire Academy over in Waretown. I don't see that necessarily is going to have any impact on that. But again, that's a question probably better sent up to the county OEM, because they're the ones that coordinate that. Eileen, good question about summer coming and the position on summer rentals. That's something that the governor sent down to the towns essentially to make a decision on, and those kind of decisions, just like the dock being open and the township parks and all that, those decisions are made by the township committee. So when that issue comes up, for all I know, they're already discussing that. It hasn't come up specifically in a conversation with me, and I do talk to them just about daily here. So I'll see if I can get an update on that and let you know next time we have one of these where that's at. Gatherings in Atlantic Heights, they're still happening. Again, Corinne, just give us a shout on those. We certainly stepped up patrol in there. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. And every single time we called about something in there, we're heading in there. So that's going to continue. So just keep letting us know, keep calling us and letting us know, and we'll keep heading in there. Julie, talking about it, we had communication with Lakewood PD. We talked with other agencies about non-compliance issues. Every day, I'm on a conference call with county chiefs where we talk about all the issues that are going on countywide. So we talk about the successes we're having, so we can share those and make sure that we're all putting the best practice into place. And we talk about the problems that we're having in different places. So I know that the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's department has been working hand in hand with all the agencies in the county to keep an eye on compliance and to address it where they see issues. And I know that that's being done. So again, I can speak to what's going on here in Barnegat, and we've been very fortunate that we haven't had any compliance issues here. So that's been a positive. Mm-hmm. Good question about municipal docks. Do we think they'll be open this summer? Again, the boat launch is open now. So if you need to get the boat in the water, get it out of the water, you can do that now. What happens to the municipal dock itself, whether it gets opened up this summer or that gets relaxed, again, that's ultimately up to the committee, and I'm sure they're going to make that decision based on guidance from the experts that are out there, and we look at how the state begins to relax some of these social distancing requirements as we watch the numbers flatten out here. So certainly, my hope would be summertime is a great time to be down on the Bayfront, and we would hope that we'd be able to loosen that up. But I'm not even sure what things look like 2 weeks from now. Never mind 2 months from now. So we know it's pointed in the right direction. We know I can look at the numbers like the rest of you can and see them flattening out. So we just need to hope that continues. Hey, Stan, asking about how are we enforcing face mask wearing requirements. So there's no requirements that we're enforcing. So the recommendation for people who are out and about to wear face coverings, that's a recommendation from the CDC. That's not an enforceable thing. The executive order covers people who are shopping in those essential stores. You're going to Acme, you're going into Wawa, and the onus is on the business owner. So the business is supposed to prevent people from going in. The only time that we would ever get involved in that is if, for whatever reason, if a business, did not want someone who wasn't following the protocol in their store and asked them to leave and they refuse to leave and it becomes a trespassing issue. That's really the only place that we would get involved at. But we're not the mask police. The CDC guidance is out there to try to keep people safe. And again, like most things, it's going to be up to individual responsibility and people to follow the recommendations and guidelines. Mark, good question. Are we holding off on finalizing firearms purchasing permits? No, we are not. We have not held off at all. I'm on there on the FAR system daily, signing on the purchase permits and the firearms ID cards that are approved. From what I understand, the choke point right now is that you have to make these appointments, and there's limited slots at Identigo where you have to go to get printed, and I think that's the choke point right now. I can tell you, I have never seen as many firearms applications and pistol purchase permits as I have seen in the last 6 weeks. It is a massive number that are coming in. I think a number I saw from the police, and this was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, was that applications were up about 85%. So there's definitely a lot coming in, but we're going to continue to process those as quickly as we can. So we haven't had to reallocate any resources from that. So there's still the same sergeant that was processing those is processing them. The system is still there, same as it was before the pandemic started. I think slowdown, if there is a slowdown, so to speak, is just in the time it's taking those to get completed because of the fingerprinting. Great question. Angela, I see your question about bait shops being open. Are there any places you're allowed to fish? My understanding is any of the wildlife management areas are open to fishing, any that were before, and the bay is open. So people are permitted to recreationally fish or commercially fish on the bay. It's allowed. My understanding from the state OEM call I was on this morning, the question actually came up about bait shops, and the guidance I saw from state OEM was that bait shops were not considered essential, even though people are allowed to go out and fish. So that's the latest guidance I saw on that. Will the bay be open this year? Yeah, the bay's open right now, Valerie. The bay's not closed, so it's still there. Glenda, good question on landscaping or construction. So landscaping is allowed to continue. Construction, there are some limitations on it that were put in place by one of the governor's executive orders, but they're allowed to continue projects that are already begun or are approved as long as they have, I believe it's 5 or less people working on site. Good question. Lisa, good question. What kind of impact has this had on budgets or overtime? Like I had mentioned earlier, we're actually in great shape on overtime. Our March overtime was the lowest it's been in a number of years, and budget-wise, we're doing just fine. Again, the way that because it's a declared disaster, 75% of qualifying expenses for the pandemic response will end up getting reimbursed back to us. So that's another positive for the budget. And I know from conversations with Tom, with our CFO, that again, you think about things. The money was there for public works in the wintertime, all the plowing and salting. And obviously, we didn't have a bad winter, so the budget didn't get strained there. Again, I don't want to get out of my lane and talk about Tom's business with the budget, but no, we're in good shape with the budget on the PD side, and overtime we're doing great right now. Good question. Marie, are we required to wear a mask while walking around trying to get some air? The CDC recommendation is that if you're out and about, that you wear a face covering. Required is a different kind of word. There's no law in place that says you have to wear it, and we're not going to be arresting people or charging them with not wearing a mask. Right? There's no law requiring it. It's just a recommendation from the CDC. Again, the only place that the executive order comes into place is if you're going into those stores. Then they want you to wear one, and you're required to wear one. T, what's the most surprising thing we've learned throughout this so far? There's nothing that really stands out to me. Again, it's a much different way of going about business here. There's been a massive amount of change in the way that we have to deliver service. But I'd say the thing that stands out to me is just how adaptable the workforce is here, and what a great job they did adjusting to this. But that's not surprising because I would frankly expect that of them. It's a really good crew that we're blessed with here, and it's great to see, but it's definitely not surprising. Corinne, I don't know if any summonses have been written in Atlantic Heights yet regarding the EO. I don't believe there have been, but I will check into it and circle back with you. Tater, always good to see you, brother. Yeah, JT's Bagel Hut. So yeah, do we think the community is less safe or more safe since the prisoners were released? Again, we're staying in our lane here. That's not up to us. I can tell you that as far as crime goes here, so far we have not seen an uptick in crime since the pandemic started. Like I said, we've seen our call volume go down. We've seen a little bump in burglaries, thefts. But frankly, those numbers are so low. You'll remember I've talked about it before back in 2018, which was the last full year of UCR when I spoke about it a month or two ago. Barnegat had the lowest crime rate in Ocean County. So when your numbers are that low, it doesn't take a whole lot to get a bump, right? We could have two thefts, gives us a 50-60% increase because of how low the numbers typically are. So we haven't seen any appreciable uptick in crime or anything that gives me cause for concern. Can we consider opening the rail trail or reopening the rail trail? That's not a decision that's up to us, and that's not a decision that's up to the township committee. That was a decision that was made by the county. The freeholders decide with the parks and the rail trail. I know anecdotally from talking to our officers here that as more parks got closed down, the rail trail became very inundated with people who were not practicing social distancing. So, we did send that information up to the county to let them know that. But again, ultimately, that's the county's decision to do that. We're scrolling. Thank you. How is the public cooperating? Public's been great here. We haven't had any problems in town really at all. Businesses have been great with complying with the executive orders. Public's been great with complying with the executive orders. Again, if I have to look at a number, seeing that motor vehicle crashes are down 64%, that's a huge decrease. So that tells us there's a lot less people on the road. So no, Barnegat's been doing great with this. Residents have been doing great. We really have had zero issues, which is a testament to the town. So that's been great. Hey, Heather. Am I on a delay? Yep, there's always a delay here on the questions end for some reason. But I can see the streaming rate, and it looks like it's still going through okay. So, all right, folks, we're right up about the time where we're last time where we wrapped it. So we'll give it a minute here to see if any last minute questions pop. Yeah, again, I see the repeated asks on Atlantic Heights. Again, call us when there's an issue, and we'll respond every time that you call. And anything that is a violation, we will deal with. We will deal with. All right, folks. I think that's a good wrap. Anybody who posts questions after we're off, I'll go ahead and move back through the thread like we did last week, and then we'll look to do this as long as this keeps being productive like it's been. We'll keep doing this every week or two, and and look forward to talking to everybody again next week. So keep up the good work. Thanks for the support. We appreciate it, and we'll see everybody soon. Take care.